Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Fragged Empire, specifically the rules. And this is my review for the rule set of Fragged Empire. So my review for the rules of Fragged Empire is 1 out of 5 stars. So my review for the production values on Fragged Empire was 4 out of 5. My review for this setting was 4 out of 5 stars. But my review for the rules of Fragged Empire is 1 out of 5 stars. And let's get into it. Okay, so there's some really interesting things happening here in Fragged Empire's rule set. Okay, so one, it's a 3d6 resolution with difficulties that go above 20, which is like what? Okay. Yeah, so it's kind of odd. And, you know, basically there are ranges. Like, essentially, if you were going to hit a 12 or a 14, that's going to be a success in a good amount of situations. Generally, if you're below a 7, it's a hard fail. And then even beyond that, you have a situation where if you have... specifically, if you have 6s, it's a strong hit. So you roll 3d6. If you hit a 6, you get a strong hit. You're looking to get a 12 or a 14, and then there's the ability to have criticals in there, right? It's a pretty interesting mechanic, but it is complicated. I mean, very, very complicated. And it even looked like there were difficulties that went above 20 in certain circumstances, and it's really super crunchy, okay? What are some of the other things that are interesting that, like, one of the things is, when you look at this, Wade Dyer created Fragged Empire, and it's very clear that there's a very solid game design mind at work here, and that's exciting to see. But there were things that made the rule set really problematic. But before I get into some of that, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that were really, really unique. So one of the things that was really unique that I really liked a lot was the hit point system. So essentially, you take your attributes. You have 6 attributes, which are very similar to Dungeons and Dragons attributes. They're not the same names, but they're similar, and basically, those become your hit points, right? So they actually serve as your hit points, right? And when any of your hit points go to 0, right, from bleeding, so when any of your attributes go to 0, you're knocked unconscious. When any of your attributes go to -5, you are dead, right? And by the way, that's another thing I liked in this game. It actually deals with death. Like, more and more I see games that are like, well, I have to pull out Forthright Open Roleplay. Forthright Open Roleplay is literally a game where you die when you decide to die, right? Like, in my opinion, once you go down that road, you're kind of like, why did we bother with combat rules? It's kind of odd. So this game has incredibly detailed combat rules, and it does respect death. Death, there are times in this game where you're going to be making a roll to see if your character died. And that roll can have tension, and it can have meaning. And I think that's pretty cool. So, like, that's if you're going to bother with combat rules, and very heavy combat rules, then you should be ready for that, right? All right, so that was really, really interesting. And actually, the hit points are even a little more, they're more complicated than that, but it's pretty elegant. So essentially, you take damage where you're bruised or you're taking stress, and then when somebody hits you with a strong hit, a 6, you're hit in a way where you're wounded and you start to bleed. And one of the things is, when you bleed, you actually roll randomly, and then you minus hit points right off of one of your attributes, which I was kind of like, that's kind of odd. Like, if you're shot in the arm, why are you losing focus? It was a little unusual, but it was very inventive, and it was unique. These rules are very unique. The entire design of Fragged Empire is really unique. It doesn't look like much else that you've seen, not directly. It certainly has strong influences. Okay, so let's get into it. So what was the problem with the rule set? Well, the rule set allows tactical miniature play with this game, right? And I'm like, what? You know, so this goes above and beyond a complicated rule set where you could have grid combat. This is tactical miniature play. Like, this person played Warhammer and is like, I want to have that gritty, you know, Warhammer complexity in here. You can modify weapons in this game. And by the way, I did learn a lot reading this game. This is a beautiful game, like, in a lot of ways. The rule sets are not good at all. There's a lot of problems with the rule set. And I'm actually going to get into one of the reasons why I think the rules are such a problem. But, so, I feel really strongly, so they allow you to modify the Wade Dyer allows players to modify weapons in this game. Such a bad idea. And the reason why is, one, you know, this game is 383 pages long. It's incredibly long. It's almost 400 pages long, right? And like, even the Dungeons and Dragons books are now, you know, approaching, they're going down to 250, not going up the other way, right? You know, and so now to Wade's point, I think, you know, to consider Wade a little bit more, Wade Dyer, the creator, his is all-in-one. It's a game with all-in-one, right? So, but the reality is, I actually feel strongly, just reading this game, anytime you see weapons modification dealt significantly within a game, that's a bad sign. It's a really bad sign. The entire industry is going the other way, right? Where right now, you know, the best games on the market are small weapon, medium weapon, large weapon, D4, D6, D8. Like, I've seen that in multiple games, right? And it's really good. It works. It's logical. It's almost starting to become a standard in the industry TRPG market, you know, which is nice. And I think, you know, so like, they're like, what's the difference between a serrated blade and a blade? Is it really important that we have all that? Now, if you're like, well, Scott, what's wrong with putting in combat, you know, super complex combat rules? Well, here's the reason why. So, okay, so this game is not only complex, it is not a carefully crafted compression of complexity. It is a carefully crafted preservation and even amplification of complexity, allowing war. It's going back the other way. It really looks like Warhammer to me, like super gritty combat rules, right? Now, why is that a problem in Fragged Empire? Well, here's why that's a problem in Fragged Empire. Because the setting is so good, right? A lot of times when I see a rule system this bad, and the reason why I think it's this bad is it's very 80s. It's very, like, it feels like Rifts. It feels like Millennium's End. It feels like GURPS. It feels like an old 80s style tabletop role-playing game. And just like an old 80s style tabletop role-playing game, you have just table on table on table on table on table on table on table, right? Just tons and tons of tables, right? And so now the problem with that is, this would, like, a lot of times when I see this kind of stuff, the setting is derivative. This type of, hey, I made an old 80s remake. The setting is as derivative and unoriginal and unexciting as the rule set are, right? But that's not the case here. Fragged Empire has a really distinct, really unique, really cool setting, right? Which, in my opinion, is never going to see play. Certainly not at my table, right? I looked at the rule set on Fragged Empire and I'm like, I can't play this. No way. It's just way, and actually, let's be clear, I 100% can play this game, right? But it would take me weeks to get ready, right? And then it would take me, you know, days to get my friends up to speed and explain to them. And then it would take them weeks to get used to the setting, right? Whereas right now, you know, I'm getting ready for the holidays, And Index Card RPG, I'm getting ready to run like six mini campaigns, like 6 one-shots with that thing, because it runs smooth as glass and fast as a cheetah, right? Those rule sets are amazing, right? So right now, with the indie market so strong, when you see a beautiful, shining setting like this, with a focus on combat that's so high, it's like 70% of the rules, right? Of not just the rules, right? It's crazy. And actually, I thought it was me, but like I took the time to watch Wade Dyer actually explain it, and he's like, "You got to go print out the character sheet and dig in here with me, because this is going to get complicated." Like, even he understands this is complicated, right? You know, it is beautifully laid out, and he has done everything possible to make this clear and playable. But my issue is the setting is so cool and unique that I think this is the kind of game you could play with a lot of different kinds of people. But when you get into like, oh, you know, let's go into 4 to 10 pages of modifying, you know, weapons and the difference between ammo type, and this scope does this, and like this gas venting does that. Like, come on, man. That, you know, like the only people you're ever going to get to watch this, to play this, are people who are actually interested in not just like, you know, combat, right, at the gritty science fiction level, but people who are into like weapons modification. Like, you're making your rule set, so you're making your ability to appeal to people so small and tiny without good need, without, you know, and this is a really great game with a lot of cool things. Like the exploration setting is really exciting, and you could play a ton of really awesome rules in it. There are a few things. So one, the downtime rules in it. There's spare time roles, right? In this game, downtime is done really, really well in this game. It's absolutely worth looking into, and you can really tell like that there's some innovative stuff that's happening with downtime rules that don't happen elsewhere. One of the things that's interesting too was it's a classless system, right? And then also one problem with the rules, another problem with the rule set, is it is skill based, right? With traits, so skills with traits. And again, I'm going to point to Index Card RPG. Index Card RPG has gotten rid of skills completely, and I think that game is ahead of the market. Others will follow down that road. So really gritty, skill-based games, I think, it just screams 80s rule sets. So it was really, it's an interesting game. The other thing is, he said, like, Wade Dyer, I think he read Riffs or something. He read some 80s games, and he's like, this is the best. Let's make it for today. And the other one is, it's made for, he specifically says the game is best at long sandbox games. Long games, like, just open your eyes, man. Like, it's 2017. People who are selling long games are not paying attention, right? It was always hard to keep a long campaign going, and now it's even harder, if not, in my opinion, impossible. In fact, this brings up another subject, which is long games. So when you hear somebody say, oh, it's easy to do a long game, or it's even possible to do a long game, what you're really hearing is they're kind of fooling themselves. Most long campaigns right now, just talk to the people who are telling you that long campaigns work. And what you're going to find out is that half their players are switched, right? And that they're taking hiatuses. And, oh, that long campaign they're on right now, it's gonna continue. They're on hiatus right now playing another game. But trust me, we'll get back to it, right? Long campaigns are done. They're just, you know, and so the idea of building this beautiful game, this beautiful world, the art is awesome, the layout is awesome, the setting is awesome, the rules are just, ugh. And they're so bad that I really don't feel like I'm going to ever get to play this game. Now, the one thing I am interested in is I may use Index Card RPG to rescue Fragged Empire, because I really think it is worth rescuing. And you could take this rule setting and you could run it with Cypher, you could run it with Index Card RPG, you could run it with Fate. I would not suggest touching this with the rules. And the reason